Introducing the Poet Life Podcast. Go check it out today on your favorite platforms, including iTunes, Apple Music, and the website, thepoetlife.com.
Find the way.
Hey, it's Christoph Wrights, the founder of the Poet Life, the co-host of the Poet Life Podcast. I'm excited today because today is the 23rd, and on the 23rd of October, and on October 29th, I'm excited to say that we're continuing on with our tradition. We have a program called Fighting Cancer with Poetry. Yes, everything is poetry around here. And as you know, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But I have a major connection with childhood cancer. A good friend of mine, his name is Justin Islar, passed away in 2012 of sarcoma cancer. And that's one of those connected to the childhood cancer family. And he was diagnosed at the age of 18, freshman year in college at Coppin State University, and fought 7 years and passed at the age of 25. What I did not know was that he didn't start writing poetry until after he was diagnosed with cancer. Didn't know that until he passed, because he was just so good in poetry. So he wrote about 12 pieces of poems during his bout with cancer, chronicling his journey. We put those poems together and created a book. And again, Fighting Cancer with Poetry was inspired by Justin. But right now, I have a friend of mine, a colleague in the fight against cancer. His name is Tattoo Tom. Tattoo Tom, what's going on, sir? How are you?
Hey, man, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me today. Appreciate you.
Most definitely. His real name is Tom Mitchell, everybody, but he's well known as Tattoo Tom. Let me ask you, Tom, where did you get that name?
Okay, so a lot of people, it's funny, I used to own a tattoo shop, right? So most people assume that I owned a tattoo shop in Virginia for 10 years. Most people assume that my nickname came from the tattoo shop, but the truth of the matter is I'm also, for a period of time, I worked as a videographer at a skydiving facility, and there were 5 Toms that worked there. So in order to differentiate them between me and everybody else, they just dubbed me Tattoo Tom. And then later on, I became a professional boxer. I had 2 fights at the Patriot Center, in fact, to raise money for kids with cancer. And that moniker followed me into my boxing career, which was short-lived. It's not even a long story. I got knocked out in the second round, but they called me Tattoo Tom. And then when Still Brave started, it just followed me there. And the kids really dig it. And the kids, they call me Tattoo Tom. They're like, hey, Tattoo Tom. And it's just kind of my shtick that's really worked. But interestingly enough, even though I owned a tattoo studio, the moniker didn't come from that. It came from my skydiving buddies.
Wow. Well, let me ask you, what's your Instagram? Do you have an Instagram?
So we have a Still Brave Instagram. And for the life of me, I don't run that. So one of the girls that works for me runs it. For the life of me, it's escaping me what it is right now. But we do have a Still Brave Instagram, and I can get that information to you. For the life of me, it's escaping me right this second.
I think it's Still Brave 1 or something like that.
That's my personal one. But we have another one that's I'll have to ask Jackie. She runs all my social media outside of Facebook. I'll have to ask her what it is.
I actually know what it is. It's Still Brave Renegades.
Yep, that makes sense. There you go.
Still Brave Renegades. I'm asking you because, as you saw right there, I changed your screen name to Still Brave Renegades. So when people are watching, they can just go straight to your Instagram page and follow you. Yeah,
appreciate that.
Yeah, most definitely. I meant to say that before we went live, but
I tried to give you a heads up. I'm not too technologically savvy. They let me run my Facebook page, but they don't let me be in charge of anything else.
Hey, that's what you call a team.
Yeah, exactly. That's my inner circle. They're the real heart.
Their strengths,
That's right. They're the real heartbeat.
Yeah,
they're the real heartbeat. Is Still Brave. I just show up.
What year was this when you got into the fight of cancer?
Okay, so my daughter was diagnosed with cancer in 2017. And long story, I'll give you a kind of condensed version of this story. I was a single dad at the time, and I really got to the point where I was struggling because I couldn't work because her treatment consumed me. We spent 8-9 hours a day in the chemotherapy clinic 5 days a week. And then I had to care for her on the weekends. So I couldn't work. And that was a tough spot for a guy like me, probably for most men to be in. I've owned my own businesses my entire life. And I guess, as much as I hate to admit it, and I'm working on my humility, but I'm a proud guy. So I struggle with taking, help from people. But there was one time where we were just desperate. We didn't have any food. We were getting food delivered from a soup kitchen. A food bank was helping us out. I couldn't pay rent. So there was a foundation. There weren't very many foundations back then like there are today. There was a foundation that stepped up and helped us with our rent that month. And I felt so grateful to them that I was trying to think of a way that I could pay them back. So as a kid, I used to box. I grew up in PG County, Maryland. Okay. And I used to box out at Laurel Boys and Girls Club when I was like 9, 10 years old. So I know how to throw a straight punch.
Yeah.
So I became friends with a guy named Jimmy Lang, who was a big boxer in the DMV. And he used to visit my daughter in the hospital. And one thing led to another. And we came up with this idea for me to fight on his card at the Patriot Center. That's what they called it back then. I guess it's Eagle Bank Arena or something now. Yeah. But I'm dating myself. But he's called the Patriot Center. And so I wanted to pay them back. So I set up this boxing match. And the money that we had gotten from the foundation was about $1,500, $1,600. And even though I got knocked out in the second round, I raised over $20,000. And so I gave that entire amount of money back to the foundation that helped us out. So I paid them back the $1,200 plus interest. So.
Wow.
And I actually fought 2 fights. And my first fight, my daughter was still alive. And that would have been, I guess, November of 2018. And she actually walked me to the ring at that fight. And then we, because I lost that fight, we scheduled a rematch. And then unfortunately, my daughter passed away in January of 2009. So the second time I walked into the ring by myself, and sadly, I lost that fight again. Well, I'm a good boxer. I'm not a professional boxer, and I could throw a straight punch. But the guy I was fighting, it was not pro wrestling. He wanted to win, right? And he beat me, hit me hard, knocked me back to second grade. And I decided at that point I was going to pick up a safer sport, so I went back to skydiving.
Goodness gracious!
Yeah.
Wow.
But we did raise some money, and we were able to touch a lot of lives, and that segued into Still Brave. The first fight we had given all the money to a foundation that had helped us out, but right before my daughter died, this is a little bit of a sad story, but I'll tell you anyway. I had come home as a single dad, and so I ran to the pharmacy one evening to pick up her prescriptions, and I was gone 10, 15 minutes. But when I had gotten home, she had gotten up to use the restroom, and she had struggled to get there. She was on an oxygen tank, and she had gotten tangled up in her lines, and she fell down, and she couldn't get back up. And so when I came home, she was crying. She had soiled herself, and I picked her up and I washed her, and I carried her back to the bed. When I was laying her down in the bed, she whispered in my ear, she's like, "I'm still brave, right, Dad? I'm still brave." And a couple of days later, my daughter died. She fought bravely, and she was really still brave. But the irony is that she wasn't being brave for herself. She was being brave for me. Right. And so I promised that I would spend the rest of my life helping children with cancer and their families that were in similar situations. And shortly thereafter, Still Brave became a reality. And the universe has conspired in our favor, and we've been a force to reckon with in the childhood cancer community for quite some time now, over 10 years.
Yes, you have, for sure. You are literally, you're a superhero in that realm.
Well, I like to tell people, I say, I might be on the side of angels, but don't think for one second that I am one. So I don't like to call myself a hero. That's not, I made a promise to my daughter, and that's what I'm doing, is honoring that promise. I like to think I'm a good man and my word is good. And plus, little joke to that story. My daughter told me that if I didn't dedicate my life to helping children with cancer and their families, she's going to come back and haunt me. Look, man, I don't want that.
Right.
I don't want that.
So she was diagnosed in 2007.
2007, that's right, with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a fairly treatable cancer, but unfortunately, upon her diagnosis, it had already progressed to stage 4, and try as we might, we couldn't get it under control. And I could spend the next hour talking about the need for less toxic, better treatments, and the fact that chemotherapy is not medicine, it's poison. but that's a whole nother topic for another day.
Yeah.
But I tell people all the time because they'll ask me, about my daughter and things like that. And so this is the way that I've compartmentalized it. I go to a lot of funerals now, unfortunately, because I'm so plugged in with the families. But I heard a pastor at this, it was a Southern Baptist church, and it was an amazing service for somebody who had passed away. And this pastor was speaking, and he said, a long life isn't necessarily a good life.
Wow.
And that made sense to me. And while my daughter's life was short, she impacted me in such a way that I've gone on now to touch an incredible amount of lives and help a lot of people. And I'm not saying that to brag, I'm just telling you because it's true. Yeah. And had her life been any different, including her diagnosis and her death, we wouldn't be doing what we were doing. There's a neat story, if you ever get a chance to look it up. It's called The Brave Little Soul. And it talks about a deal that God makes with a little soul about coming to earth. And that's how I choose to look at my daughter. So you get a chance, I'll send you a link when we're done talking to the story. Yeah. It's a great story.
Wow. So basically, she pursued her path, her purpose, and
right, for sure,
completed her work.
Yep, that's what I believe. She came here to do something specific. She did it, and then her job was done. And so she went back to wherever it is that brave little souls go. She was a real matter of fact. That was the thing that I think I love the most about my daughter. She wasn't one to candy coat stuff, and she was a very opinionated and very aggressive, and that's one of the things that I admired her. But she told me countless times in no uncertain terms what I was to do when she died, and she made it clear that this is what I was to do, and I took it as gospel, and I do it. So
wow. And how was she when she passed?
So she was diagnosed at 16 and she passed away at 18.
Gotcha. Okay. You told me that you wrote a little poetry.
I do write a little poetry. I've been writing poetry since I was a kid. It's interesting. Something that just I had a seventh grade English teacher who tasked us with writing a poem one day. And back then in school, I was too cool for poetry, right?
Right.
Like, I wasn't going to write a poem.
Right.
But she talked me into it. She really impacted me. Her name was Mrs. Link. And one day I want to find her. I think it's ironic that her name was Link, but that's another story. Yeah. But she encouraged me. She's like, Tom, I think, based on what you've done here in class, I think you could write a good poem. And I wrote one, and she thought it was wonderful, and I kind of liked it. And from that moment forward, I wrote a lot of poetry. Occasionally you'll see me down at Busboys and Poets on open mic night. Every once in a while, I'll get down there.
Nice.
I do write a lot of poetry. I'm a singer, songwriter, so I write a lot of songs.
Really?
I mean, well, to say I'm a singer is kind of a stretch. I do front a punk rock band, so
okay.
I carry a tune not very far.
Sure.
But I write all the lyrics. I write all the lyrics for the band, and I'm also currently working on a book, so I'm trying to write a book as well. But I love writing, and I love.
You have layers, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to me. Nobody is more surprised than me. If you knew all the things, like I just do a lot of things, and life. When I was a kid, somebody said life is wasted on the living, and I was like, I'm not gonna go out like that. So I'm trying to do a little living while I'm alive.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah. A lot of people are existing.
Yeah, and I think we see that a lot right now, right?
Right. Most definitely.
But I try to do stuff, and I'm a guy who, more than anything, what I pride myself on and what I like to really, drive home is I have no idea what I'm doing. Okay, what I do is I show up and I wing it, but I show up, and for me, that's what life is all about. It's about the showing up. The results and the outcome, that's up to the gods. You know what I mean? It's not up to me. What's up to me is the showing up. It's the footwork, and that's what I do. I show up and wing it, man. And I do it. And I do it in as many ways as I possibly can.
Most definitely. That's half the battle.
I think so. I think it's 3/4 of the battle.
Showing up for others. Yeah, most definitely. Wow. I'm glad I thought to reach out to you in relation to this event. Because I've been following you for years, man. And I was just thinking of, all right, what organizations should we connect with? And I your name just popped in my head. Or I was on Facebook and your post popped up on my page. Maybe I'm not sure how that worked out, but I'm glad it did. And again, today is October 23rd, And so 6 days from now, on October 29th, we will be live on our YouTube page, or is it YouTube channel, Poet Life TV, but also our Facebook page, The Poet Life. But we'll also be live on Still Brave Childhood Found. What is it?
It's Still Brave Childhood Cancer Foundation.
Got you. Definitely.
Yep.
And so if you're on the East Coast, it's 5 to 9. So do the math on that. And what we're going to do, and it's still time, poets, or people who just like to write poetry. We are allowing you to submit your poems, your cancer related poems, to where you can record yourself reading, reciting, or performing, if you're into spoken word, your cancer related poem. Just send that video in, and what we're going to do is have a semi-live production, to where we have a live host, but the videos will be pre-recorded. And so the host will be doing his thing between each poem. It's 4 hours, which means just make your video about 5 minutes, and introduce your poem with your name, where you're from, what inspired you to write the poem, who do you know that's been affected by cancer, and you just send it in. We're going to use that. Just make sure it's clean, no cursing and things of that nature. We keep the brand clean. We want to make sure that the kids and church folks and moms and dads are able to consume it without being cursed out. And just keep it clean. And we're really excited about what we're doing. So we're going to be raising funds and awareness for childhood cancer, and we'll be donating it to Still Brave. And so Tattoo Tom, man, let me ask you about the tattoos, right? I know the origin, the beginning, but then you started to incorporate the tattoos in your fundraising, in your awareness, right?
Yeah. So initially, like a lot of people, I just got a tattoo, right? I mean, like a lot of people do. And then I got more and more tattoos. And then eventually I owned a tattoo studio and got a bunch more. A lot of those initial tattoos were tattoos that were of personal nature to me, and like a lot of people, meant something to them. But later on, as Still Brave really started to evolve, I was trying to think. So I'm always trying to think, how can I incorporate what I am into what I do, rather than trying to be like a childhood cancer activist. I'm just trying to be Tattoo Tom that does childhood cancer activism. Right. Wow. So I've incorporated skydiving. I've incorporated our music. I've incorporated boxing. So I was like, how do I incorporate tattoos into this? So what wound up happening, it started sort of serendipitously, quite frankly. I used to own a tattoo shop, as I said, and I sold that tattoo shop. And now the owner, a gentleman named James Marlowe, who owns, shout out to Marlowe Inc. Tattoo in Fairfax, Virginia, good friend of mine. And he was really generous. And he said to me one day, he said, if you ever have a family, whose child passes away, or there's a meaningful tattoo, you call me and I'll hook them up. So that's sort of how it started. So we started doing tattoos for families whose children had passed away, some memorial tattoos, and James Marlowe would do those free of charge for us. Wow. And as things were starting to evolve, I got this idea one day, and I said, well, what would happen if I decided to auction a part of my body to the highest bidder, and whoever that winner was of that auction, they could tattoo anything they wanted on my body, within reason, of course, and we'll keep the brand clean, nothing inappropriate. Right. But I guess in my mind, I was thinking that maybe like McDonald's or Exxon Corporation would give me like $50,000 to put their logo on my head or something. But unfortunately, it didn't turn out quite that way, which wound up being better. So let me tell you, the first auction that I did, this little girl with brain cancer raised $3,000, her and her friend. They went out, they had yard sales and car washes and did odd jobs and did everything they could. And they were the winning bidder, and they won the tattoo. You know what they made me get tattooed, my friend? They made me get a kitty cat, butterfly, unicorn standing on a softball. I don't know how to say this. I don't know how to say this. Farting rainbow gas. And I have a tattoo on my leg right now, a big old kitty cat, unicorn, butterfly standing on a softball, farting rainbow gas. And then for the next 4 or 5 years, every year we auctioned off a part of my body. and we got a variety of tattoos. So that was one way that it sort of transpired. And then oftentimes I'll travel around the country. Kids will see me on social media. I mean, also, I'm sure you know I run ultra marathons, 200-mile races.
I was going to bring that up too.
Yeah, so I'm kind of nationally known for that, and the races that I run to raise money, and we've raised over, I think over $1 million just on my ultra running. But I dedicate each of those miles to a different child who's either fighting cancer or has lost their battle to cancer. And my daughter is always the final mile in the race, and I carry pictures of those kids with me on these races. I mean, I make sure that two things. Number one, that children with cancer who pass away are never forgotten. I'm not going to let them be forgotten. I'm not going to let their parents ever think that their children will be forgotten. And also, I use those children as motivation because I'm not really a runner. I'm not a boxer. I'm not a professional skydiver. I'm not a poet. I'm not a singer. I'm just a dad whose daughter got sick, right? She got really sick and she died. And when she died, I wondered why somebody didn't do something. And then I realized I am somebody. So I do a lot of somethings. And so anyway, I travel around the country sometimes and visit with kids who have been miles in my races, or, you know, their parents find me on social media and we FaceTime together, the kids and I, and I'll go visit them and we'll hang out. And oftentimes when I go to visit them, one of the things that we'll do is we'll go to the tattoo parlor and they can draw a tattoo for me and I'll get it tattooed in their honor and at their I don't know the right word, at their discretion, whatever they want. So I've got cupcakes and unicorns and all kind of stuff tattooed on me. My favorite one, tell you a quick story if you have time for it.
No, we have time. Go.
I'll tell you a great story. So I had this little boy, and sadly he was home on hospice. And he knew he was going to pass away. 12-year-old boy with osteosarcoma, a bone cancer, much like your friend you just mentioned. And so unfortunately, that's one of the cancers that hasn't been a lot of progress in treatment. So I mean, it's not always a good outcome with the sarcomas. So anyway, he knew he was going to pass away, 12-year-old boy. And this was April. And he said to me, he says, Tom, and I drove to his house, you know, all the time. We were thick as thieves, this guy. I called him my road dog. And so he said to me, he said, hey, Tom, I know I'm not going to make it to Christmas because that's my favorite holiday. He said, any way you can help me do Christmas in April. I said, boy, I got you. So we wound up getting a turkey and a ham and Christmas cookies and a tree and Santa Claus and everything. And the news crew showed up. And as a present to him, I got a tattoo on my leg of a dog driving a hot rod. And it's got Daniel's name on it because he's my road dog. And I says to him during the party, I said, so now, no matter what happens, you're always going to be a part of me. That's never going to change. And then, I mean, that's a great story, but here's where it's a little sad, that story, but here's where the story gets funny. So the next day I'm at the hospital visiting with this girl named Meg, and Meg had seen the news story, right? So she looks at me. She, I guess, was around the same age, maybe a year or two older. She says, so I see you got a tattoo for Daniel. I says, yeah. She said, well, when are you going to get a tattoo for me? I said, well, Meg, I can't just begin tattoo for everybody. You know, I auction off my body. I make money. Plus I'm running out of room. And Meg says, well, I hear what you're saying, but when are you going to get a tattoo for me? I try to buy myself some time, right? So I was like, well, I'll tell you what, Meg, you have to come up with the best idea ever for me to get a tattoo, right?
Right.
And so she says, all right, I'll think about it. So we started walking around the hospital. If you've ever been around with somebody that has cancer and they're hospitalized, you get bored, and so you do laps around the floor. Right. So she and I are walking around, and she's not saying anything, man. So I can almost smell her little brain churning, right? And she looks at me, stops. She's dragging her IV pole. She stops, and she looks at me. She says, Tattoo Tom. And I says, what? And she says, you know how you're always coming up to the hospital and the chemotherapy clinic, visiting with us kids and playing Barbies and walking around while we're dragging our IV poles? I was like, yeah, Meg. She said, well, you should get a tattoo of an IV pole so we don't feel all alone. Wow. And I was like, James, I'm on my way. Wow. And so I got a tattoo of an IV pole on my leg. And I got to tell you, man, that is my favorite tattoo, because now when I go to visit kids, particularly the younger kids, and they're hooked up to their IV pole, the first thing I do when I walk in the room, I'm like, whoa, Jimmy, you got an IV pole? So do I, bro. So do I. You know, and it's this great icebreaker. And it's been like one of the best tools that I've ever had for kind of breaking that wall with these kids. And so, I mean, I can't give enough. And Meg right now is doing great. Meg's in remission. She's kicking
Wow.
butt. She just voted for the first time. I see her on
Wow.
Facebook all the time. We still go out to dinner, and she helped me get one of my most favorite tattoos ever.
That
And so I
is
do want to tell you,
amazing.
I can't divulge the secret right now, but we've got a big fundraiser coming up that I'm going to be
Nice.
announcing any moment on Facebook. I'm just waiting for the web developer to get the functionality of my website complete first.
Sure.
And it's going to be a huge tattoo fundraiser that's directly related to my book. And this is a little teaser there. Stay tuned to my page. Look at my social media. Stillbrave.org is the website. Find me on Facebook. Follow me. And you'll be able to see how you can be a part of me forever too.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you this just came to my mind. What if you incorporated a campaign, an ongoing campaign, almost like St. Baldrick's, right? Where they shave the heads,
Mm-hmm.
right? But what if you did the tattoo thing where people can tattoo themselves and raise money that way?
Right. So we've contemplated a couple different things. That's always on the board. I'm going to give a shout to them. We love St. Baldrick's model. What St.
Yeah.
Baldrick's has done with the shaving their heads is propelled. They're probably the most, between them
Yeah.
and Alex's Lemonade Stand, probably the most successful childhood cancer foundations in the world.
Yeah.
So we love their model. And so we're always trying to find something. One of the things that we might do is a skydiving fundraiser, where instead of shaving your head, you come out and make a skydive to raise money to help children with cancer and their families.
That's good.
Were sort of working towards that, but then COVID hit and sort of hemmed us up a little bit because, it's hard to be in an airplane with COVID and everything. We backed off on that, but we also are thinking about a tattoo thing. And with the next fundraiser that's coming up, that might be a really good segue. So that's a good idea. I'll make mention of that to my board of directors at the next meeting for sure.
Most definitely. Let me ask you, man, how do you do it? How do you, especially the funerals, right? And the hospital stays, how?
All right. Let me explain it to you the only way I know how. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, when my daughter died, it hurt 12. Okay. I can't describe to you the amount of pain that I went through then and that I still go through today to have lost a child. Okay. But I made a promise to her. And so I try to keep that promise. And what I've discovered is I get very close to these kids. Speaking of poetry, there was one little girl named Gabriella Miller. And she and I would write poetry together. She was a 10-year-old girl, this little Jewish girl, and had nothing in common with a tattooed knucklehead like me, but we became the best of friends. And so I would send a line to the poem to her iPad, and then she would write the next line, then I would write the next line. And we've got like 10 or 15 of these most amazing poems. And you wouldn't know which kid, whether it was the kid or the adult that wrote which line. It was amazing. So unfortunately, when Gabriella passed away, on a scale of 1 to 10, it hurt an 11. Okay. And there's been a lot of kids that I've gotten really close to, and when they pass away, it hurts 11. And when most kids pass away, it hurts 10, like it should. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is the highest, right?
Right.
But here's the thing. I haven't gotten back to 12 yet. I know in my heart that I can get through 12. Okay. Now, what would be, maybe if I hate to say this, I don't want to, it's hard to say, but if another child of mine, because I do have other children, if another child were to pass away on a scale of 1 to 10, it probably would hurt 12 again.
Right.
But see, I know I can get through that because I've done it. Right. And because I can get through it, I have an obligation. I have not an obligation. I have I have to help children with cancer because I can. Now, I'll tell you, though, I'm not afraid of anything in this whole world. I'm not afraid to get my butt whipped. I'm not afraid to lose my life, my money, nothing. But you know what I am afraid of? I'm afraid of 13. That's what I'm afraid of.
Wow.
So that's how I do it, man. I can do it, so I do it. I can't tell you how. I can't tell you why. People are like, I don't know how you do it. And I'm always like, I don't know how you don't.
Wow.
You know?
Man,
I know, man.
To ask you that question, man, because you would post saying, I just came from a funeral. I just came from a funeral. I just came from a funeral. I'm like, how?
I had two kids last week pass away at the same time. Neither one of their families could afford the funerals. So I had two children in the same funeral home at the same time. And I was arranging their services, and it's hard. I'm not gonna tell you that it's not hard, but if I didn't do it, who would have done it? You know?
Tell me what your organization does. You're
Okay.
giving pieces, but tell me what your
Right.
organization
So our
does.
mission statement is thus: Still Brave provides non-medical supportive care to children with cancer and their families. So that's pretty open-ended. I guess basically what that means is, unlike St. Baldrick's, we don't give money for cancer research. If I gave every penny I ever made since I started this to cancer research, I would have bought a microscope and 2 slides. It'd have been a waste of money, right?
Right.
But I've
right.
taken that money and I've paid rents, I've paid mortgages, I've paid car payments, home repairs, funerals, vacations, flights to other cities to get treatment in other cities. We have a program for brothers and sisters of children with cancer whose lives are almost always overshadowed by their siblings' diagnosis through no fault of their own.
Right.
So we do things for them. We have events that celebrate them. And the funny part of that story is almost every time we put an event on, the sibling insists, of course, that their brother or sister with cancer comes to the events. It's a beautiful thing. So
right.
So we do that, and one of the things that makes us unique is we do the hard stuff. A lot of our families are well below the poverty line before a childhood cancer diagnosis. We do a lot of work with inner city kids, African American kids, Spanish kids, immigrants. A lot of people. Some people are. I never ask, "Are you a citizen of the United States?" before I offer help. Okay,
Right.
but some foundations do, and so we like to set ourselves apart. We're the place. We're the people that you call, that the social workers call when there's nobody else to call. They call Tattoo Tom, and Tattoo Tom always says yes.
Wow.
So that's
you
the short
figure out
version.
a way to get it done.
I get it done, man, and I don't do it by myself. I do it with a tribe of renegades. We call ourselves Renegades, and that's a song I heard a long time ago. And the line from the song is, "Renegades are people with their own philosophies. They change the course of history. Everyday people like you and me. Come on,
Come on.
come on."
Wow.
So and then I'm a big softie. So when I can, like I love to I'd spend every minute of every day in the chemotherapy clinics playing Barbies and Crazy Eights and whatever. Like for some reason, and I really couldn't tell you how it is, but kids dig me. I've never thought in a million years, particularly, with the life I led as a younger man, that I'd ever
Right.
be doing this. Right. But kids just dig me. I mean, they fall in love with me as quickly as I fall in love with them. And again, that just lends itself to, I do it because I can. And
Right.
like, I can't tell you how many times, and again, this isn't to brag, it's just true. And it baffles me. I'm more surprised than anybody. But I'll go
Right.
visit a kid at the hospital who's had this, horrible time with these horrible treatments, got mouth sores and all the horrible side effects. And their parents will tell me after I leave that their child was inconsolable until I showed up. And I changed the whole way of feeling about themselves, man. And that another answer that I would give you as to how I'm able to do what I do, it's because it's sacred. The work I do is sacred, and I treat it that way. And I take that that ideology into my work. What I'm doing is sacred, and I'm honored and bewildered, but so grateful that I'm the person that the God or the universe or whoever has chosen to do this sacred work. I'm eternally grateful that I'm that person.
Most definitely. But that's why I said earlier, you're a superhero to the kid, to the child.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, they look up to me. They think I always tell people I'm a cartoon character. I don't like superhero, but I'm a cartoon character. I come in, I'm hyper animated, I'm hyper alive. I don't say that, I don't talk down to them. I talk to children, 8-year-old children, the same way I would talk to you, like a grown man, and they appreciate that. And kids can tell, man. Kids can tell authenticity from a mile away.
See right through it, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't put on any front when I walk in. I'm me for them. And here's another thing that I'll tell you, and this is a little bit of a secret, but I'll tell you anyway. A lot of these kids, particularly the ones that pass away, they're those brave little souls that I was telling you about. They worked out a deal with God when they came here to do their little bit and then go back to heaven after they touched the lives, right? But I know that they're the brave little souls, and they know that I know. Okay, so it's a little weird. It's like the veil is parted a little bit, and between this life and the others, and I know why they're here, and they know that I know. So it's a little partnership that the kids and I have to take care of their parents. That's what we're doing.
That is awesome, man. That is so amazing to me. Because like I said, I've always wanted to ask you. I never really had the atmosphere, the environment to just say, hey, so how do you do it? So and you articulated it so well. What are you all's how has COVID, we talked about this, I think, the other day. How has COVID affected you all's mission?
So COVID is hitting us pretty hard. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like a lot of businesses, particularly nonprofits, when the economy gets bad, people stop their charity giving, right?
Yeah.
It just happens. And then also because of COVID, I had a 240-mile ultra marathon scheduled through the Moab Desert for October. I was supposed to be there last week, but two of my crew members live in states that required a 14-day quarantine if they traveled to Utah.
Right.
So I couldn't take them with me. And then, quite frankly, I didn't want to jeopardize the health and safety of my crew to travel. So we lost about $150,000 this year.
So that race is still on.
The race went on. Yeah, it happened. They just ended. I think it ended last week. It was a 4-day race, but I couldn't take my crew there. I erred on the side of caution because I didn't want to. Because my tribe is savage. Like, my tribe would do anything for me. And if I had asked them to come anyway, they would have came anyway. And I just didn't want to do that. So I decided, for better or for worse, to trust God, to trust the universe, that if I lose this $150,000, it'll come back to us some other ways. And I believe that. Like, I shouldn't be successful. Still Brave shouldn't be successful. I'm a tattooed knucklehead, right? But we are. And we keep, and I don't know why, I don't know how, but I think if I were to wager a guess, it probably has very little to do with me. I just show up and wing it, bro. That's all I'm doing.
Tell me about that race, man, because you've run that race.
Well, let me tell you. So I've run several ultra marathons, ranging from 50 miles upwards of 200 miles. I completed one 200-mile race in 2015 around Lake Tahoe, through California and Nevada. Unfortunately, the next race that I attempted was called the Bigfoot 200. And that race was up Mount St. Helens volcano and across the Cascade Mountains. And it had the equivalent of elevation change of running up Mount Everest and Mount Kilimanjaro combined. And so I tried 3 times. And every time I tried that race, something would happen. I got injured real bad one year, ripped my groin. I got hyper dehydrated one time and couldn't even drink water, and I was medically discharged. And then another time I got to an aid station past the time cutoff and I got disqualified. It's called did not finish. So 3 years in a row, I did not finish. But just like children with cancer who relapse, they got to keep going back, or they'll die. So I wasn't necessarily going to die if I didn't go back and run this race again and again and again. But I went back anyway. And last year in 2019, I'm proud to tell you, I finished that race. Finally finished it. And it was the most amazing thing to cross that finish line after those 4 tries. I got a tattoo about it, as a matter of fact. And I can't say what the tattoo says because we're keeping your brand clean. But I did get a tattoo about it. And so that race was 206 miles. And arguably the most difficult.
6 miles over 4 days.
Yeah, and so I ran. It took me there. I think the cutoff was like 105 hours, and it took me close to 100 hours. And of those 100 hours, I slept for about 5. So I was on my feet for 90 some hours, moving up and down some of the steepest mountains you've ever been in your life. Mountains like this, man, where I was like, my chin was scraping. But every time I felt like quitting and every time I got tired, particularly this last year, I looked at those cards of those kids and I said, I'm not quitting on Jimmy's mile. I'm not quitting on Billy's mile. I'm not quitting on Susie's mile. And next thing you know, I crossed that finish line, So I modeled for.
Tell me how you have them, right? Your cards of the kids. How do you?
So what I do is when I'm getting ready for a race, I post on social media, get ready to run another race. If you would like me to honor your child at one of the miles, please send me a picture and a bio of your child. And I get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids. It's unfortunate there are that many kids.
Right.
And then what we do is we try to raise money per mile. So we have competitions. Like you can start a team and you try to raise $1,000 for Billy mile 42, and you
Right.
compete against other teams. And so we've raised, I think the last year's race, the most we've ever made $236,000 at the Tahoe 200, and most of that money, I think over $100 and something $1,000 came just of the race, because I'll be hallucinating and I can't see straight, and they film it and they put it on Facebook. And when people see me, hallucinating and losing my mind and suffering like that, they tend to donate more money. So it's a model that we started that seems to work for us. The only unfortunate part is I got to run the races, and they're not easy, man. They will break you, especially like day 3 with no sleep. You really hallucinate. Like you see stuff that's not there. And while I was cognizant of the fact that I was hallucinating and those things weren't real, I saw them nonetheless. Like they were there in the middle of the trail, in the middle of the night. There were dragons and car mechanics and all boats and all this stuff. And so then what I'll do is I'll get to the next aid station, which could be anywhere from 12 to 20 miles in between, and I'll lay down just long enough for the hallucinations to stop, and then I get back up because I'm slow, and if I don't get back up, I won't finish on time. So I just sleep just long enough to shut off the hallucinations, then I start moving again until they come back. It's crazy, but it's I'll do anything. I'd cut my arm off to help kids with cancer if I thought it would benefit them. You know what I mean? That's how serious I am about what I do.
Yeah, I the last 2 years I followed you with those races, and I was like, this dude is absolutely crazy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, my sanity shouldn't come into play because I'm definitely crazy. Man.
Yeah, because I
I
run now, and right, and I only run 2 miles in the morning, and I'm winded and sweaty and gone, and just thinking about 206 in 4 days.
Yeah, this race that I'm going to attempt. So we couldn't go this year because of COVID, but good Lord willing and the creek don't rise, we're going to go back next year. So I have all the kids in place. We've already raised $45,000 or something. So I'm going to go back next year. This race is 240 miles through the desert. So it should be interesting. It's going to be hot as all could be during the day. It's going to be freezing below zero at night. And I've got to move 240 miles. But I'm doing it for 240 kids. To me, it's not 240 miles, it's 240 kids.
So does your team go with you during the race? Do they drive? How does that work?
So I bring a team with me that usually is about 4 or 5 people. And what happens is after a certain distance, so after I think like the first 50 or 60 miles, I'm allowed what's called a pacer. And so a pacer actually runs with me to keep me from getting off. Because when I'm hallucinating, it's easy to make a wrong turn. It's easy to lose sight of where I'm going, especially at night. So I bring a pacer with me to help keep me grounded and focused. So we bring 2 pacers so they can switch off and sleep, so everybody's rested. And then the crew will travel from aid station to aid station with a big SUV so that I can jump in and get a couple of minutes of sleep and then get food and things like that. And they make sure that I have changes of shoes and changes of clothing as the weather changes and stuff like that. So they really look out for me because, when I say to you that I'm hallucinating, like imagine like a crazy person hallucinating, and they've got to keep me moving. They've got to get me dressed and out back on the trail. And that's their job because I would just spin around in circles. I wouldn't even know what to do. So my crew is indispensable. I wouldn't finish any of these races without them. And that's why I didn't want to risk their safety and health with going this year because they're that important to me.
Wow.
But it's crazy, man. It's fun. It's fun as all get out, and it's miserable as all get out too.
Yeah.
I'm not a runner, bro. Like I'm not a runner. I'm not a boxer. I'm none of those things. I just pretend to be so I can help kids with cancer.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. I'm really astounded right now, man. I knew of you, and we've seen each other in passing, but also at the Sarcoma Foundation the
Cure Fest.
We've been performing poetry there year after year, and I'm just really excited just to finally be connecting with you. And on October 29th, 2020, 6 days from now, we are going to fight cancer with poetry. And we are accepting poems, cancer-related poems from people who I'm going to say poets, because like you said, you're not a poet, but you write poetry, right? So people who like to write poetry, you can submit a cancer-related poem video, and we will utilize that and incorporate that into the Poetry-a-thon. That's what we're calling it.
Awesome.
All right. So from 5 to 9, that is a Thursday, next Thursday, October 29th, we are raising funds and awareness for cancer, childhood cancer. And we're donating that money to Still Brave Cancer Foundation. Tom, if you could leave something with the folks that are listening, reading, because it is a blog too, and watching, what would you say to them?
So I tell people all the time that I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to tell you how to think, but I want you to do something. And I just want you to think, and these kids, they don't have a voice, adults, when they get cancer, sometimes it's due to lifestyle choices that they've made. Wow. There's a variety of things, occupational hazards, a variety of things that factor into it. When a child gets cancer, they haven't done anything, man. They don't deserve it. And again, what I tell people all the time is, when my daughter died, I wondered why somebody didn't do something. And then I realized I am somebody. So what I'm looking for is somebodies to help me. Please help me. Because I can't run these races forever, man. Right. But I will. I'll charge hell with half a bucket of water and a gasoline suit for these children. So I tell people all the time, advocate, donate, just do something. Do something. Volunteer, something. Please help me.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. We fight cancer with poetry, but really, it's really fighting cancer with creativity.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. Specifically, we just use poetry. Like if you like to play basketball, start a tournament, raise money.
Everybody's good at something, right? Everybody's good
whatever
at
you're good at, whatever you like doing, whatever it might be, you can raise, because you'll get that question. I'm sure you get that a lot too. But what can I do?
I get that all the time. Yeah. I get that all the time.
Yeah. So whatever it is that you're fond of, whatever church organization, fraternity, sorority, university, you can start something to help raise awareness at the very least.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we've all got, you call me a superhero. Again, I don't like that term, but we've all got superpowers. We all do, whether it's writing poetry, whether it's running up mountains, we all have superpowers. The trick is to use your superpowers for good. Exactly. Like Batman and Spider-Man and those guys, you know what I mean? Yeah. And that's what I'm about. Like whatever it is, be creative about it. Don't do what I do what you do, but do it to help somebody else.
Right. Right. Folks, thank you all for listening, watching, and reading. It's the Poet Life Podcast. It's Christoph Wrights, and this is Tattoo Tom. And again, we are fighting cancer with poetry on October 29th and beyond. We're not accepting the funds. The funds are going directly to Still Brave. Your website is stillbrave.org.
Stillbrave.org.
Yes. And you can donate directly to the website.
You can.
Super easy. It's a tab that says donate. I went to the website last night just to check out the flow of everything, and it's super easy. So it isn't a long drawn out process. Simply go to stillbrave.org and donate now. You can donate from here till whenever you get paid, whenever the situation, comes to your mind to say, I'm ready to donate. Please do that. Because again, during these times, especially COVID, has stopped a lot of the activities, as Tom said. And so, we have to make up for that, and go even further than that. So do us that favor. Join in. I'm sure that you know someone. Unfortunately, that is the case.
Yeah, everybody knows someone, right? That's been touched by it.
Everybody knows someone, whether it's a family or friend. So it used to be that wasn't the case, but it is now, and it is what it is. So it's the Poet Life Podcast. Check us out at thepoetlife.com. Again, we're connecting with Still Brave go to stillbrave.org to donate. Check them out. Follow them. Get involved. Thank you all for being for watching, listening, and reading. It's the Poet Life Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Christoph. I appreciate you. When you called me or messaged me about this, it was a no-brainer for me.
Yes, sir.
I respect you. I respect what you're doing, and I respect poetry. So it was a no-brainer for us. We're honored to be partnered with you on this project. So thank you so much.
Awesome, man. Tom, I'll talk to you, okay?
All right, bud. You have a great day.
All right, talk to you.
All right.
Introducing the Poet Life Podcast. Go check it out today on your favorite platforms, including iTunes, Apple Music, and the website, thepoetlife.com.
Find a way.